New York never sleeps. Its neon arteries pulse with relentless energy, a far cry from the quiet suburban life I once dreamed of. I'm Jack Reynolds, a 45-year-old private investigator, and my office is the city itself. It's a place where secrets are currency and trust is a rare commodity. But I never imagined that the most shocking betrayal I'd uncover would be within the walls of my own home. It was a Tuesday evening when I came home early. The advanced security system, one of Linda's many contributions to our ultramodern apartment, chimed a familiar greeting. As I stepped into the living room, the air felt charged, like static before a storm. The laughter that drifted down the hallway wasn't mine or Linda's. It was male, deep, and resonant. My heart pounded as I moved silently towards the bedroom, my investigative instincts kicking in. There, framed by the soft glow of our ambient lighting, was a scene that burned into my memory. Linda, my wife of 10 years, was entangled with Greg Martin, a tech entrepreneur whose polished charm masked a ruthless ambition. They were oblivious to my presence, lost in a moment that shattered my reality. "Get out," I growled, my voice barely recognizable. The shock on their faces was almost satisfying, but it did nothing to dull the pain. Linda scrambled to cover herself while Greg reached for his clothes, his smug demeanor replaced by a fleeting look of fear. "Jack, please, let me explain," Linda started, but I cut her off with a sharp gesture. "Both of you, out, now." The words came out cold and mechanical, but inside, a storm was raging. They hurried out, and I followed them to the door, slamming it shut behind them. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, staring at the door, trying to process what had just happened. My mind raced, jumping from rage to sorrow and back again. How long had this been going on? How could I have missed the signs? Questions swirled, but answers were elusive. Collapsing onto the couch, I felt the weight of betrayal settling over me. This was my sanctuary, my place of refuge, and it had been violated. Memories of happier times flashed through my mind, now tainted by the harsh reality of the present. As the night wore on, I realized that this wasn't just about Linda's betrayal. It was about my own blindness, my own failures. I was a detective, damn it. I was supposed to see through the lies, but here I was, the biggest fool of all. The morning after the betrayal felt surreal. The city outside continued its relentless pace, indifferent to the chaos within my home. I woke up on the couch, the events of the previous night replaying in my mind like a nightmare on loop. The apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison, each corner echoing with memories of Linda's deceit. I dragged myself to the kitchen, the silence almost oppressive. I wasn't ready to face the world, but work had always been my refuge. Pouring myself a strong coffee, I tried to muster the strength to get through the day. My phone buzzed with messages and emails, but I ignored them, needing a moment to collect my thoughts. As I sipped my coffee, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mrs. Jenkins, my eccentric elderly neighbor, holding a plate of cookies. She had a way of showing up at the most unexpected times, her presence both comforting and intrusive. "Morning, Jack. Thought you might need these," she said, her eyes twinkling with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Thanks, Mrs. Jenkins," I replied, managing a weak smile. She peered past me into the apartment, her gaze lingering on the disheveled living room. "Rough night?" she asked, not unkindly. "You could say that," I admitted, not ready to delve into the details. She nodded, seemingly understanding more than she let on. "If you ever need to talk, you know where to find me," she said, handing me the cookies before turning to leave. As the door closed behind her, I took a deep breath, the scent of freshly baked cookies mingling with the stale air of the apartment. I needed to get out, to breathe, to think. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, hoping a walk would clear my mind. The city streets were alive with the usual hustle and bustle, but today, it felt like a blur. I wandered aimlessly, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. My mind kept drifting back to Linda and Greg, their betrayal gnawing at my insides. I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched, of the city itself knowing my shame. Eventually, I found myself at a small park, the tranquility a stark contrast to my turmoil. I sat on a bench, watching children play and couples stroll by, their laughter a cruel reminder of what I had lost. The world moved on, oblivious to my pain. As the sun began to set, I made my way back home, dreading the emptiness that awaited me. The apartment was just as I left it, but it felt even colder now. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the plate of cookies Mrs. Jenkins had given me. The simple act of kindness brought tears to my eyes, the floodgates opening as I finally allowed myself to grieve. The night was long and sleepless, filled with questions and regrets. How had I missed the signs? How could I have been so blind? My thoughts spiraled, but there were no answers, only a deep, aching void. In the early hours of the morning, I finally drifted off, my mind exhausted from the relentless barrage of emotions. As I slept, dreams of the past mingled with the harsh reality of the present, leaving me more confused and lost than ever. The aftermath of betrayal was a dark and lonely place, but as the days passed, I knew I had to find a way out. I couldn't let this define me. I was Jack Reynolds, a private investigator, and I had a job to do. The city needed me, and maybe, just maybe, I needed it too. Returning to work was both a blessing and a curse. The familiar routines and cases offered a semblance of normalcy, yet every shadow and secret I uncovered reminded me of the betrayal at home. My focus shifted from client cases to an investigation of my own. I needed answers. Why had Linda turned to Greg? Was there more to the story than a simple affair? I began by digging into Greg Martin's background. He wasn't just a tech entrepreneur. He was a master manipulator with a history of dubious business dealings. Late nights at my office became the norm, poring over files, tracing financial records, and connecting dots that painted a sinister picture. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Greg was a man who thrived on control and deception. One evening, as the neon lights of the city cast eerie shadows across my office, I got a call from Sam Carter, my old mentor. He had retired years ago, but still kept his ear to the ground. "Jack, I heard about what happened. If you need help, I'm here," he said, his voice gruff but sincere. "Thanks, Sam," I replied, grateful for the support. "I'm onto something. Greg Martin isn't just some tech guy. There's more to his story." "Meet me at the old diner," Sam suggested. "We'll talk." The diner was a relic from another era, its retro charm contrasting sharply with the city's futuristic veneer. Sam was already seated in a booth when I arrived, his presence a comforting anchor in my turbulent life. "Tell me what you've got," Sam said, nursing a cup of coffee. I laid out the details, the suspicious transactions, the shady partnerships. "He's been covering his tracks, but I've found enough to know he's bad news."
Sam listened intently, nodding occasionally.
"Sounds like he's been using your wife to get to you, Jack. Maybe to discredit you, or worse." The realization hit hard. Greg's affair with Linda wasn't just a betrayal of love. It was a strategic move, a pawn in a larger game. "I need to confront him, but I can't do it alone," I admitted. Sam leaned back, a glint of determination in his eyes. "We'll take him down together. But be careful, Jack. People like Greg don't play fair." As I left the diner, a renewed sense of purpose surged through me. This wasn't just about my broken marriage anymore. It was about justice, about unraveling the threads of a complex web woven by a master manipulator. I was ready to dive deeper, to expose the truth and reclaim my life from the shadows of betrayal. Investigating Greg Martin and his twisted motives had consumed me, but as I dug deeper into his world, I found myself haunted by memories of my first marriage. Anna Baker had been my first love, my first wife. Our relationship ended amicably, a rare and precious thing in a city where love often curdled into bitterness. One rainy afternoon, I found myself holding an old photograph of Anna and me, taken years ago during a trip to the countryside. The contrast between the carefree smiles in that photo and the turmoil I felt now was stark. In a moment of longing, I decided to reach out to her. Maybe reconnecting with Anna could provide some perspective, some clarity. I called her, and to my surprise, she agreed to meet. We chose a small, cozy cafe that we used to frequent, a place that held memories of simpler times. As I walked in, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the warm ambience took me back to those days. Anna arrived shortly after, looking just as I remembered, elegant and serene. Her smile was genuine, and for a moment, the weight of the recent past lifted. "Jack, it's been a long time," she said, her voice soft and kind. "Too long," I replied, feeling a mixture of nostalgia and regret. We settled into a booth, and after some small talk, I found myself opening up about Linda and Greg. "I never thought I'd be in this situation," I admitted. "I miss the signs. I feel like I've failed, both as a husband and as a detective." Anna listened intently, her expression thoughtful. "Jack, you can't blame yourself for someone else's choices. You did your best with the information you had." Her words were a balm to my wounded pride. As we talked, I realized how much I had missed having someone who genuinely understood me. Anna had always been good at seeing through the layers, getting to the heart of the matter. "I've been investigating Greg," I said, "and it seems he manipulated Linda to get to me. It's more than just an affair. It's a setup." Anna's eyes widened. "That's serious, Jack. You need to be careful. But knowing you, I'm sure you'll uncover the truth." As we said our goodbyes, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Anna's wisdom and our shared history had given me strength. The echoes of the past had reminded me of who I was and what I was capable of. It was time to face the present with the same clarity and resolve that had once defined me. With Anna's words resonating in my mind, I returned to my investigation with renewed vigor. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, but I needed more concrete evidence to expose Greg Martin's true intentions. My instincts told me that there was a hidden agenda, something far more sinister than a simple affair. Late one night, I received an encrypted message on my secure line. It was from Raven, a mysterious hacker I had occasionally collaborated with. Raven was a ghost in the digital world, a shadow that moved through networks with unparalleled skill. "Need to meet.
Urgent.
Usual spot," the message read. The usual spot was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a relic of the industrial era that had been repurposed for our clandestine meetings. As I approached, the eerie silence was broken only by the distant hum of the city. Inside, the flickering fluorescent lights cast long shadows across the empty space. Raven was already there, their face obscured by a hood and mask, as always. "Jack, I've been digging into Greg Martin's background. What I found is disturbing." They handed me a tablet displaying a series of documents and photos. Greg's seemingly legitimate business ventures were a front for something much darker. He was involved in illegal surveillance, data manipulation, and blackmail. His network of informants and operatives reached deep into the city's power structure. "Greg's been targeting influential figures, collecting dirt on them to use as leverage," Raven explained. "Your wife was just one of many pawns. He's been using her to get to you, hoping to discredit you or worse." The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Linda's affair was not just a betrayal of our marriage. It was a strategic move in a larger game. "Why me?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You've made enemies, Jack. Your work as a private investigator has exposed too many secrets. Greg saw an opportunity to take you down and eliminate a threat to his operations." Raven's revelations fueled my determination. I needed to confront Greg and expose his entire operation, not just for my sake, but to protect others from his manipulation. "Thanks, Raven. This information is invaluable." "Be careful, Jack," Raven warned. "Greg is dangerous. He won't hesitate to protect his empire." As I left the warehouse, the gravity of the situation settled over me. This was bigger than a personal vendetta. Greg Martin's hidden agenda threatened the very fabric of the city. It was time to bring his house of cards crashing down. Armed with the damning evidence provided by Raven, I knew it was time to confront Greg Martin directly. This wasn't just about personal vengeance anymore. It was about stopping a man who thrived on manipulation and destruction. The showdown had to be public enough to ensure my safety, but controlled enough to prevent collateral damage. I arranged a meeting at the top of a skyscraper in the city's financial district. The building, a symbol of power and ambition, seemed a fitting place for our confrontation. The observation deck, with its panoramic views of the metropolis, provided the perfect backdrop. The city sprawled below, oblivious to the high-stakes game unfolding above. Greg arrived punctually, his confident swagger betraying no hint of fear. He was dressed in his usual impeccable suit, the picture of success and charm. "Jack," he greeted me with a smug smile. "What's this about?" "Cut the crap, Greg," I snapped, holding up a file filled with the evidence Raven had compiled. "I know everything. The illegal surveillance, the blackmail, using Linda to get to me. It's over." For a moment, a flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly replaced by a calculating look. "You've done your homework," he said, his tone icy. "But you've got nothing that can stick. It's your word against mine." I stepped closer, refusing to back down. "I have more than enough to bury you. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about every person you've manipulated and destroyed. It ends now." Greg's eyes narrowed, his veneer of calm starting to crack. "You're making a mistake, Jack. You think you're some kind of hero? You're just a pawn, like everyone else." "Maybe," I replied, my voice steady, "but I'm a pawn who's ready to take down the king." As I spoke, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. Sam Carter, my old mentor, had followed through on our plan and alerted the authorities. A team of officers was converging on the building, ready to make the arrest. Realizing he was cornered, Greg's composure finally shattered. "You'll regret this, Jack," he snarled, his face contorted with rage. "No, Greg," I said quietly. "You will." The officers moved in, cuffing Greg and leading him away. As he was escorted out, I felt a wave of relief and vindication. The confrontation was over, but the battle had left me changed. I had faced my demons and emerged stronger, ready to rebuild my life from the ashes of betrayal. The city below continued its relentless pace, unaware of the small victory that had taken place above. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. The threads of my life were beginning to weave a new pattern, one of resilience and hope. The confrontation with Greg Martin had brought a sense of closure, but it wasn't the end of my journey. With him behind bars, I hoped to find some peace. Instead, I was left with a lingering question. Why had Linda betrayed me so easily? I needed to hear her side of the story, to understand the depths of her motivations. I arranged to meet Linda in a neutral place, a small cafe tucked away in a quieter part of the city. The air was thick with unspoken words as we sat across from each other, the memories of our life together hanging heavily between us. "Why, Linda?" I finally asked, my voice tinged with both anger and sorrow. "Why did you do it?" She sighed, looking down at her hands. "Jack, I didn't love you anymore. I haven't for a long time." Her words were like a dagger to my heart, but I forced myself to listen. "Then why stay? Why not just leave?" "It wasn't that simple," she replied, her eyes meeting mine for the first time. "I was afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of starting over. And Greg, he offered something I thought I needed. Excitement, passion. I got caught up in it. Greg manipulated you. Used you to get to me," I said, my voice hardening. "Did you know about his schemes?" Linda shook her head vehemently. "No, I didn't. I swear, Jack, I didn't know. I was blind to it, just as you were blind to what was happening between us." Her admission brought a strange sense of clarity. We had both been blind, in different ways. I had been so absorbed in my work, in my world of secrets and lies, that I had failed to see the cracks forming in our marriage. "I didn't just betray you, Jack," Linda continued, tears welling up in her eyes. "I betrayed myself. I thought I was escaping, but I was just running in circles." There was a long silence as we both absorbed the weight of her words. I realized that understanding didn't mean forgiving, but it did mean finding a way to move forward. "I can't change the past," I said quietly, "but I can learn from it. We both can." Linda nodded, wiping away a tear. "I'm sorry, Jack. Truly." "Me too," I replied, standing up. "Goodbye, Linda." As I walked away from the cafe, I felt a sense of release. The revelation had been painful, but it had also been necessary. It was time to let go of the past and embrace the future, whatever it might hold. The city's neon lights seemed a little brighter that night, as if reflecting the spark of hope ignited within me. The days following my meeting with Linda were a blur of emotions, but one thing was clear. I needed to rebuild my life. The city, with its endless possibilities and relentless pace, offered a perfect canvas for a fresh start. My office, once a sanctuary of solitude and focus, became the center of my new beginning. I threw myself into my work with renewed vigor, taking on cases that challenged me and kept my mind occupied. Each case was a puzzle, a distraction from the remnants of my past. Yet, it wasn't just about distraction. It was about rediscovering my passion for uncovering the truth and helping those who needed it. One morning, as I was sifting through a stack of new case files, a knock on my office door broke my concentration. A young woman, Emily Carter, stepped in. She was in her late 20s, with an air of determination and a hint of desperation in her eyes. "Mr. Reynolds, I need your help," she said, her voice trembling slightly.
Emotion for her tog sit.
"What's the issue, Emily?" "My father's gone missing. He's a prominent scientist, and I believe he's been kidnapped," she explained, handing me a folder filled with documents, photographs, and frantic notes. As I delved into the details of her case, I felt a familiar spark of intrigue. Emily's father was involved in groundbreaking research, and his disappearance was shrouded in mystery. This was more than just a missing person case. It was a labyrinth of corporate espionage and scientific breakthroughs that could change the world. Emily's case became my primary focus. We spent hours piecing together clues, navigating the city's underbelly, and interviewing shady characters. Through it all, Emily proved to be more than just a client. Her resilience and intelligence reminded me of why I loved this work. She was driven by the same need for truth and justice that had always fueled me. As the days turned into weeks, Emily and I formed a partnership. Her insights and my experience created a formidable team. The case was complex and dangerous, but it reignited my sense of purpose. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of investigation, Emily looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. "Thank you, Jack. I couldn't have gotten this far without you." I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't experienced in a long time. "We're not done yet, but we're getting closer." The path forward was becoming clearer. I was no longer defined by the betrayal and heartache of my past. Instead, I was forging a new identity, one built on resilience, dedication, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. The city, with all its complexities and contradictions, was where I belonged. And as I walked its neon-lit streets, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. The case with Emily Carter had been a whirlwind of danger and discovery, culminating in the rescue of her father and the exposure of a corporate conspiracy. It was a victory that rekindled my passion for detective work and left me feeling more alive than I had in years. With the case closed, I found myself looking forward to the future with a sense of optimism I hadn't felt in a long time. Emily had been more than just a client. Our partnership had grown into a friendship built on mutual respect and shared experiences. As we stood on the rooftop of my office building, overlooking the city that never slept, I realized how much my life had changed since Linda's betrayal. "Jack, what's next for you?" Emily asked, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "I'm not entirely sure," I admitted, "but I know I want to keep doing this, helping people, solving cases. It's who I am." Emily smiled, a hint of mischief in her expression. "Well, if you ever need a partner, you know where to find me." The idea was tempting. Emily's keen intellect and unwavering determination had been invaluable, and together, we made a formidable team. "I'll keep that in mind," I replied with a grin. The following weeks were filled with a sense of renewal. I redecorated my apartment, stripping away the remnants of my life with Linda and creating a space that reflected my newfound independence. The walls were adorned with photos of the city, moments captured during my investigations, and mementos from cases solved. I also made time to reconnect with old friends, people I had distanced myself from during the turmoil of my marriage. It was refreshing to rekindle those bonds and rediscover the importance of community and support. One evening, I received a call from Anna, my first wife. "Jack, I heard about your latest case. You're making quite a name for yourself," she said, her voice warm and encouraging. "Thanks, Anna. It feels good to be back on track," I replied. "I'm happy for you. Maybe we can catch up sometime?" "I'd like that," I said, feeling a sense of closure and gratitude for the role she had played in my journey. As the city buzzed with its usual energy, I realized I had come full circle. The pain of the past had been a catalyst for growth, pushing me to become stronger and more resilient. My work as a private investigator was not just a job. It was my calling, a path that had led me to a new beginning. With each case, I was reminded of the complexities of human nature and the importance of seeking the truth. And as I looked out over the city from my rooftop, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them head-on. This was my new beginning, and I embraced it with open arms. Standing on the rooftop of my office building, I watched the city below, its lights twinkling like 1,000 stars against the dark canvas of night. The city had always been a place of secrets and shadows, but now it felt like a place of possibilities. I had come full circle, from betrayal and heartbreak to renewal and hope. The cases I had taken on since Linda's betrayal had been more than just work. They had been steps toward healing and self-discovery. Each investigation had taught me something new about myself and the world around me. The people I had met along the way, Emily, Anna, Raven, and even the enigmatic Sam Carter, had all played a part in my journey. One evening, I found myself back at the diner where I had met Sam months ago. This time, I was meeting Emily. She had become a constant in my life, a friend and confidant who had helped me see the world through fresh eyes. "Jack, you seem different," Emily said, her eyes searching mine. "More at peace." "I feel different," I admitted, sipping my coffee. "I've learned to let go of the past and embrace the future. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it." Emily smiled, a genuine warmth that had always drawn me to her.
I'm glad.
"You deserve happiness." As we talked, I realized how much Emily had become a part of my new beginning. Her presence had been a beacon of light in my darkest times, guiding me toward a better version of myself. Later that night, I visited Sam Carter. The old detective had been a mentor and a friend, and I owed him more than I could ever repay. "Sam, I wanted to thank you," I said, sitting across from him in his cluttered living room. "For what?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. "For everything. For helping me see the truth, for being there when I needed guidance. I wouldn't be here without you." Sam chuckled, waving his hand dismissively. "You always had it in you, Jack. I just helped you find it." As I left Sam's place, I felt a sense of closure. The past had been painful, but it had also been a crucible that forged me into the person I was today. I had come full circle, returning to the core of who I was, a detective dedicated to uncovering the truth, no matter the cost. Back on the rooftop, I looked out over the city with a sense of fulfillment. The journey had been long and arduous, but I had emerged stronger and more resilient. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it head-on, with the knowledge that I had come full circle and found my true self along the way. As the night breeze ruffled my hair, I smiled, knowing that whatever lay ahead, I was prepared. The city was alive with stories waiting to be uncovered, and I was ready to dive back into its depths, one case at a time.